For y'all. Hopefully Ray's not going to be echoing because he's up first.
Hold on. Let me get this sorted out. Carl, can you yourself on Gather? That might be part of this.
It is. How about that? We good now?
Hello? Hey, y'all can hear me okay?
Yep.
Bree, are you ready to record? Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for joining, guys. Today there's like a ton of stuff I want to show you, or the team wants to show you, and it's a bit of a sneak peek on things that we haven't fully that we'll plan on doing like a much bigger launch and marketing effort around in the weeks to come. But wanted to give you guys a quick sneak preview of some of the things that are very close to coming down the line. So let me start with our new data portal. Screen share. So as you guys are, well aware at this point, we've been collecting all sorts of data sources to power our data pipeline. And in the not too distant future, if not already, we're going to be promoting the fact that you can actually leverage these public data sets in a variety of different ways, and there's a lot of different things that you can use. So straight off of our homepage, you should have a link to our new data portal. It's powered by all sorts of data that powers the pipeline itself, as well as raw data sources that you can have access to. Click through here. You'll get a sense of our data overview. So the first 7 data sets that we're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks are going to be our full data pipeline. So of course, you've always been able to make queries against every stage in our data pipeline, but we're making that a little bit easier to discover here. Both, staging, intermediate, and MART models. There's also our playground data set, which is like the trimmed down subset of that of the last 2 weeks of data so that you can do testing and development. There's GitHub data, which is predominantly powered by GitHub Archive. There's Ethereum data. This is something we're really excited about, is 7 live public data sets from the superchain. So that's Optimism Mainnet, Ace, Frax, Metal, Mode, PGN, Zora, and there's a couple more that we're working on shortly. But basically, you'll have blocks, transactions, and traces over all of these networks as BigQuery public data sets. That's something we're providing to the community as a public good. And I'm very close to finishing up Farcaster and Lens. I was just fixing some bugs this morning, so hopefully you'll see some data exchange listings on that shortly. We also have had Gitcoin Passport and OpenRank data, which is basically reputational data against EOA addresses, as well as in the OpenRank case, reputational data against Farcaster IDs. So bunch of like new raw data sources that will make it easy to use off of BigQuery. You should be able to view everything also in our BigQuery data exchange that's linked right here on Analytics Hub. Once you have access to these things, you can once you subscribe to these data sets, you should be able to make queries directly on BigQuery in their SQL Studio. You've always been able to do that. You've always been able to create Python notebooks, including Google Colab, which is fully integrated with BigQuery. But we also added some new guides on how to connect these public data sets to third-party tools. So you might be using Tableau, Metabase, Hex, etc. One of the things we're really excited about is what happens when you connect full visibility into our data pipeline with all the source data that's live and free and updated with any kind of public, third-party tooling that you want, including Hex. So Carl will show kind of like a demo of something that he's been playing around in the Hex world. Before he does that, I just want to give a quick shout out also to, we've been working really hard to kind of systematize and formalize how you can connect new data sources, because ultimately this is a public good. We want it to be a communal effort. This isn't our data. This isn't something that we're trying to hoard. This is clearly something we're trying to promote as a communal good. So we're launching a bunch of new docs on ways that we would prefer people to connect their data sets to OSO. And so there's 7 or 8, I guess, different ways. We're deprecating the stuff that we used to do on Airbyte and Cloud Query and kind of moving more towards a Dagster-centric workflow. And you'll see these kind of start to get populated over the course of the next week. Most of this should be fleshed out. Of course, like the easiest way to contribute data is if you already have a BigQuery public data set. You can either reference it directly if it's in the right region, or use BigQuery Data Transfer Service to replicate it into ours. But we also have some new fancy tooling around like replicating a Postgres database, or writing a plugin to crawl an API, or some of our partners have already been dumping Parquet files into our GCS and just having docs around what that looks like and how to be a data partner for OSO. But all of that is here. And yeah, I think we'll have more to share in the next demo day. Maybe I'll pop it over to Carl to show the power of using a third-party tool like Hex in our data sets.
Yeah, let me take over the screen and share this. Hopefully, does that work? Can you see the whole tab? Can you guys see?
I don't see.
Yeah, I don't see anything either.
Oh shoot! I clicked.
Are you on Gather?
Yeah.
Sharing on Gather at the moment? Yeah.
My bad.
You guys did see my screen earlier, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We could. Sorry. Share my screen. Okay. All right, we good now? You can see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, sweet. Full disclosure, I had never used Hex before. I've used a lot of different tools for creating Python notebooks and a lot of different environments for doing SQL, but this was my first time actually experimenting with Hex last night. And so, Ray, I used the docs. I was able to connect, get everything going. It worked fine for me, and I think Hex is pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of features that I still want to get my head wrapped around. But I love how you can basically decide whether you want to show the code or just the output of it, or both. And what I prepared is a example of how you can run the OpenRank algorithm on top of the OSO unified events model. And the use case that I did was to generate kind of a simple version of a developer rank algorithm. For Optimism Retrofunding 5, we've actually been working with the OpenRank team to come up with some way of looking across contributors to different OP-Stack repos and identify people that could be good badge holders or reviewers of projects. It's more just like a way of testing this out. But hopefully there's going to be a lot of interesting applications that can be done at the intersection of OpenRank and the Open Source Observer event model. So just a quick walkthrough, because I think this is actually kind of cool. We install the dependencies. We kind of look at, like, the way I set this up is that it kind of looks for people who contributed to Ethereum before it was cool, so up until 2018. And it uses a very, very simple weighting function to look at the commits that they did. And then if they were, the older those commits were, the more kind of weighting they get in this trusted seed. Again, like pretty basic, but you can see, I think there's like 20 or so developers that came back from this. Some are like pretty famous people now that are still very much involved. You can see Vitalik here as well. But in any case, it's a kind of an initial pass at getting a set of seeded developers that we can use. Then we kind of go back into the events model and we identify any repos that those initial set of trusted developers have started or forked since 2022. So again, totally arbitrary logic, just made it up as a proof of concept. But then you go in, you grab those trusted repos, and then you grab any developers who have committed code to those repos. Now we get back a much larger set of developers. Again, some arbitrary logic on how to create a evaluation or weighting function of their contributions. And then we're able to actually, create a graph, which basically shows any developer that has, or any of the trusted developers that have liked a developer of one of these newer repos, that's a connection. And so then we can run Eigentrust, again, super simple with the SDK. You just literally put in effectively 2 variables, and then you can get the ranking out of it. And then as a way of visualizing it, I just put together a quick heat map. And you can see here are the main repositories that have been of interest to the early Ethereum developers. And then you can see all the developers that have been contributing to that. So it includes a lot of like famous names like Arachnid and George Constantinople, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, fun proof of concept. And what we're hoping to do in the next week or so is actually contribute to a data challenge with the OpenRank team and Andrew from Crypto Data Bytes to create more use cases of the OpenRank and event model type analysis. But it's also a nice proof of concept of integrating a third-party tool with the open source observer dataset.
Actually, I have a bunch of folks here. We should pause for questions if anybody has any.
All right.
Okay. No, we can run ahead.
Nice. just heart emojis. Cool. So that was maybe like 2 hours of the last week or so. The big thing that we've been working on is the impact metrics for retrofunding for Optimism. So last week on Thursday, they opened up the voting round. There's another 9 days. The big difference with this round is that people are not voting on projects, they're voting on metrics themselves. I'm actually not connected with my wallet, so I won't be able to show what this looks like as a voter. But effectively, there are 16 different metrics here. You can click on them, you can read about the metric itself, and then you can see how that metric would distribute tokens to a set of projects. So here you can see it's pretty much a pretty strong power function where there's a few projects that have a lot of the gas fees across the round, and then a pretty long tail of smaller ones. And what ballot holders will be doing is basically constructing a ballot by adding some combination of these 16 metrics and then setting a weighting function. I think we can, I might not be able to demo that unless I'm signed in with my wallet. But basically, let's say that I liked gas fees and interactions from trusted Optimism users. I could add both of those metrics to my ballot, and then maybe I'm going to give gas fees 70% weighting and this metric 30% weighting. Effectively, your vote would be that weighting across those two metrics, and then based on the 200 plus projects and their metrics, it would assign a allocation to each of those projects. So that is the voting. Obviously, to get to the point where we had all these metrics ready and all of the projects ID'd and traced and so on, there was a huge amount of work that was done. And so the other thing that we recently did, just today actually, is we put out kind of a request for audits. So if people want to go in and review the code that we used and kind of check that it's mapping everything properly, then we created a bounty for that. And so there's, I think, up to 1,000 USDC per audit available. And I think we can have up to 3 winning submissions. The goal here is really the process. So anybody who goes through these things, obviously if they identify issues, we want to rectify them. If they check everything and they don't find any issues, that's good too. We're much more concerned with the process than the actual outcome. So here's the data challenge. We'll kind of share this more widely. We just finished it like an hour or two ago. And then finally, if you want to see some of the things that are enabled or allow you to kind of look at the logic and trace how these queries are working, I'll give you a few examples here. So the big model that we have is this one here. So it's the RF4 impact metrics by project. And so you can see here, these are all the different metrics, the same definitions that you saw in the voting app. And then we can actually look at the code itself. You can compile it. You can see how the logic is done, so people will be auditing that this is done correctly. The part that I really like is actually looking at the lineage graph. So you can put this over here, and you can come in and see exactly how this, all the data that's flowing into this. Obviously, there's a lot. Let me zoom in. How do I do this? There we go. So you can see each of the models that flow into it, and you can see where they come from. And so, for instance, the event model is very important. So you can, So anyway, you can come back in and you can look at each of these models and audit them as well. And so that's what this scope of work is about, is kind of looking at them, making sure that everything is matched correctly, that the contact tracing has been done correctly, and that if there's any issues, we have until the end of the voting round to rectify them. So yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to show.
Yeah. I want to reemphasize that, I think we really want this to be a community effort, right? So getting data partners to contribute source data that can inform better insights, and in the future, evolving this entire data pipeline and the impact metrics that come out of it, hopefully will have a direct impact over, what gets funded in funding experiments like retrofunding. So super excited to work on this with all y'all.
One other thing that I'm sure Matthias, if not others, might enjoy is that we have basically all of the contracts that have been discovered. It's more than 350,000. They're kind of here and they've been labeled. So if you want to do any analysis to see if there's any kind of big factories or things that have been missed, this is a place to look at those. They'll also be exposed to the API, so you can grab them there as well. But for people that just want to go directly into a notebook or something, you can get the data here. And then there's actually a few apps that are now using the same data. There's like a pairwise matching thing. There's a community effort to show the metrics alongside each of the projects. So if you want to get the raw data, here's all the raw data for every project, its application ID, and the metrics themselves. It's actually pretty fun looking at this. So we did a blog post just the other day. I'll show you one thing quickly. One visualization that we had. So we basically took all of the projects that were in there and added up the gas fee contribution that they had. And in total, just the projects that made it through the round, they contributed about 2,500 ETH. And so if you do the math, that's worth about 5 million OP at current prices. And the round itself is giving away 10 million OP. So the economics are actually not that crazy. This thing starts to make sense, especially when you focus on at least the on-chain builders. I thought that was cool. Sorry, I've been talking for too long. That's it for me.
That's super cool, guys. Awesome job, with all of that. That's super interesting. One quick question.
Cool. Any questions while Reuven sets up?
One quick question on the last part, the RPGA4 part. Did these projects now have to attest?
You ready, Reuven?
Oh, yeah, Ray. Can you hear Matthias? He's speaking right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird. No, I can't.
Oh, that's strange. Sorry. Yeah. We'll signal you, Ray.
Oh no, wait. Sorry. Can you try again?
Test. Can you hear me, Raymond?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, awesome.
Oh, okay. All good. I was just wondering if those projects had to attest now to their contracts, or how maybe you mentioned it, Colin, I missed it. Basically how you made sure that these contracts are mapped to the correct projects.
Yeah, so it wasn't. Let me just share something quickly. Let me pull the screen. Okay, so basically there were these attestations which included all of these were made on chain. So they have a kind of signed message saying that they own this GitHub repo, and in order to have their contract verified, they also had to have the deployer in their control. And so we have all of this data coming in through the attestations. However, some projects have thousands of contracts, or they have a factory, and then, coming from that factory, you have thousands of contracts. And so in addition to getting some of their bigger contracts this way, we also had a contract discovery model, which would basically identify the root deployer and identify other contracts that deployer had deployed over the RF4 period. And so in some cases that would grab, say, like a small test version. But in many cases, you would be seeing like other deployments that had happened from the same project. And so there was a fair amount of like making sure that we were kind of capturing the right, the right types of contracts. I think there were some cases where a deployer might have switched hands between projects, in which case we could only look at the contracts at the factories. We had to not just use the deployer as the source, as kind of the root. So there's kind of a write-up which explains a bit of that logic. And then that's probably one of the main things we want people to audit, is just make sure that we didn't make any mistakes or there wasn't any kind of duplication.
Okay, nice. But cool. I mean, because especially this like deployer project mapping with like some kind of like attestation, that's worth a lot already. And this data is also accessible, right? In the repository that you just shared.
Yeah, so you can definitely, we did an export of it. Let me just grab it. Sorry. It's in here.
Can't you just get it from BigQuery, or do you prefer people to access a static snapshot?
You can get it from BigQuery as well. Yep. Okay. But the static files, I don't know if they have the same permissions on them. So that's why I was putting them here as well. But if you look at this data, yeah, you can grab the contracts by application, for example.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you. Super helpful.
And then there's a huge model, too big to show right now, but it has every downstream contract. I don't think you would want that, but it includes everything.
Nice.
Even like a Zora NFT contract would be attributed to Zora through that.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. So yeah, just go over some of the changes that I was working on this past sprint. Was doing a lot of things with Carl also to kind of help debug all the process for our R4. So, but this is all the stuff that's kind of outside of that. So, one of the big infrastructural changes that we've made is to have Dagster run all of our data pipelines. We're still in the process of fully transitioning that from some of our GitHub Actions and some other kind of manual other things. But in the process of doing that, we also, being that we are dedicated to open source and having this open infrastructure, we've been wanting to make sure that one, the documentation is good enough for external contributors to begin contributing new data. And then also that the organization and CI/CD processes of all of this actually helps to make sure that this is continuously maintained. So yeah, one of the big things that we did was to reorganize all of our Dagster assets in code. So as you can see here, everything is organized by the network at the moment. Or obviously, well, there are a couple of things that are not networks like BigQuery and dbt here. But we have Base, Ethereum, Frax. These all represent different data sets within those networks. Don't worry about this. I'm debugging something at the moment. But we have Frax blocks, traces, transactions, etc. And so previously in our code, it did not reflect that when you went in to look at the assets. It was a bit of a zoo. It's less of a zoo now. maybe still a bit of a zoo, but we're attempting to unify this to look as close as possible to what we have here, so that it's also very easy to update. So now when you look at this, it's no longer 1,000 lines of one single asset like file. It's multiple asset files. Like this is all the base related assets and their configuration. And then where things are being stored, etc. There will be, if there aren't already, docs on all of this. This is our dbt setup, and then this is all reflected here in our Dagster read-only instance here, our public Dagster. And then the other big thing that kind of came along with this was that we have now added, as part of pull requests, you can see my draft pull request that has some failing things, but let's ignore some of that. But we actually have, now Node and Python and dbt pipelines. So the Python pipelines also ensure that it's statically typed correctly. So for those of you who wanted contribute any Python code and have not used static typing in Python, that will be a little bit of a learning curve, but hopefully this can guide you along the way. And then also,
is there a quick
what's up?
poetry command? Is there a quick poetry command to just run all of the type checking linting stuff?
There is not a shortcut command. We probably should make that. We probably could make that. The funny thing is that the type checking is in Node, and the linting is in Python.
It's fine if it's like a PMPM command, like shortcut.
Yeah.
Some kind of shortcut that makes it easy.
Yeah. There is no current shortcut, but we do. If you have the GitHub hook or the Git hooks enabled, then it will run all of those things there. So, but yeah, that is something we should document for sure. And just have like a simple PNPM lint Python or something. But yeah. There are some in-flight changes that I would love to talk about, but they're not yet done. So, to be as fair to this as possible, I don't, want to show replicating databases yet. So, but yeah, that's it. Short and sweet.
Oh,
any questions? Awesome.
Well, in the next, let's say in the next week or so, we're going to be fleshing out the rest of these docs and doing a little bit more of a marketing push over these public data sets and how to use them in different ways, and particularly leveraging it for some of these data challenges that we're shipping. So we'd love to get your help and the rest of the community to help, spread the word on that when we're ready. But wanted to give you guys at least a sneak peek of what's about to come.
I know that Elliot has been working on some stuff. I don't want to put you on the spot, Elliot, but if you have anything to demo, it'd be cool to see that. If not, we can also just kind of chat separately. I saw you come off mute, Elliot, but I can't hear you. That's weird.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Heyo. There it is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually don't have anything to demo. But yeah, if we could discuss the data for the application we're building, that would be awesome. So yeah, we're building this on-chain impact dashboard is what we're calling it, and we want the R4 data, all of the metrics used there. We want to be able to show that as not as a static data set, but it's something that's live, and we can tell how that's moved post R4. And in addition to that, we want to be able to add projects to that data set. and I don't know what that's going to require. Or I know we had talked about it a little off this call prior, but what questions can I answer about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we've shown on like previous demos, which is pretty relevant here, is basically the pipeline from adding data to building some kind of model on top of that, and then finally exposing that through an API. And so it's actually pretty streamlined right now. And I think, like specifically in this case, all we would need to do is take the metrics that we have been currently using for Optimism and create like a production-ready version of them. The main difference is that Optimism just wanted a snapshot of everything. They said, here's a 6 or 7 month window. We only care about activity within that window, and anything that's outside that window doesn't exist to us. Obviously, going forward, you'd want to come up with some version which maybe looks at these metrics over a trailing 6 month period or trailing 3 month or something. So that's like I think the main thing we just need to decide, and then we can implement them and track them.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that sounds good as far as we're not trying to display any more than, I think at this point we were thinking maybe a 3 month would be nice, but even just a month would probably suffice. But yeah.
This is super interesting. I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about like how far along you are now and what's your timeline for trying to ship something like this?
Yes, so we were hoping to, so our current application is just using dummy data, and but it's based on your other data models that are made available through Hasura. And so anyway, our target is the mid to late July, after R4 is ended, and basically our only need for R4 to be over is we want to know, or the voting period specifically. So July 8th is when the voting period ends, and we need the weights that the badge holders, the aggregated weights for the various metrics. We're going to use that so that we can display like an overall progress of the entire ecosystem on a graph. But then we also want to be able to display where specific projects are hitting these various metrics, both overall and then like individual metrics. So yeah, did I answer the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. So, but what we need is an API that we could call to get that information, going forward. And then I think another big piece of this that Jonas has mentioned is the whole goal of our project is to get more projects that, will be eligible in future on-chain builder R4 rounds, or not R4, RPGF rounds, would just be aware that this funding is out there, and they'd be able to use our site to then, I don't know, just have an idea that this funding's out there, and they will go to sign up. And then shortly after, the idea is that their project would show up after they've gone through the steps with Agora to sign up there. And I assume also linking up, I guess we had mentioned a mapping that links that Agora data to your project IDs and the OSO data. And so, yeah, so this would need to be something that adds projects going forward as well. Is there any challenges perceived there?
I don't see any challenges moving forward. I mean, it's always been a bit of a manual reconciliation process between how projects are defined in Agora versus, if you've looked at our data pipeline, everything that we define as a project is pretty explicitly laid out in the OSS directory repo. So, it's just a matter of figuring out how to do that mapping between past rounds and future rounds to the projects that are kind of laid out there. But nothing fundamental that can't be overcome. Yeah. I'm curious, you mentioned that you are currently working on this with a set of dummy data right now. How far along are you in actually building out the UX for it with the dummy data?
Yeah, it's pretty far along. Our current test site is not working at the moment due to some changes we made yesterday. So that's why I can't demo it. But but the yeah, it's coming along quite nicely. We have the UI all up. We're still working on a few last things with how we're going to store the data, make it easy to access, how we need it to display everything. And yeah, we have different phases lined up for, at first, I think we're just going to show the global score across the ecosystem and then the individual scores for each project. But then like we'll get into the individual metrics beyond that as well, maybe in a future phase. But at least that's our target right now is that. And but yeah, I mean, we have the design sorted out and it's pretty much all there, except for some of the data stuff, which is kind of reliant on what exactly that data will look like. And I mean, I assume it's going to be very similar to how we're using or how we've used your GraphQL API in the past.
Awesome. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending a link to the GitHub repo, I assume it's a public repo in one of our channels. I'd love to take a look and see, just make sure there
Sure.
isn't anything that would be surprising.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Which channel should I put it in?
I just made a new one called Showcase. I don't know what was, or I guess UI UX. I don't know. Doesn't really matter.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Drop it in there.
Yeah, we can definitely schedule more time to deep dive into this as well, Elliot. Thanks for joining. Other questions that folks have? Cool. Maybe in that case, we can wrap up the demo day, and then yeah, Elliot, we can schedule some more time to deep dive into this. Cool.
Thanks.
Well,
That sounds great.
thanks everyone for joining.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Sweet. Thanks so much. If anyone's at ECC, hit me up. We'll be there. Would love to meet up. All right. See you, everyone.
Thanks. See ya.
Later, guys.